Good evening, everyone. This evening we're going to be making a green curry, and I've got all the ingredients on the table already. So, in no particular order, I'll just point them out. We've got green chilies there, and I'm going to be tasting them in a moment to make certain how hot they are, so I don't completely blow our ears off when we eat this. I've got Thai basil here, which is really crucial to give that real Thai flavour. Coriander. Garlic, too much garlic, but I brought two bulbs just in case the old one was a little on the old side. We've got ginger there, good old staple of Indian food. Galangal, don't know whether you've ever heard of galangal before, but galangal is a more subtle form of ginger, gives a very subtle and not as strident a taste as ginger. Makes quite a difference with Thai food where you really need the taste to be spot on. We've got some shallots there, some lemongrass. These are dried lime leaves, preferably they'd be fresh lime leaves, but since we don't live in the Asian subcontinent, they're a bit more difficult to get here, so it's going to have to be lime leaves. They shouldn't make much of a difference. Two limes here. And I think I've already shown you the chilies. We've also got some coriander seeds and some black pepper seeds, some ground cumin, and to do the sauce for the curry, we've got some coconut milk here, and some fish sauce as well, Thai fish sauce, which again will give that important mixture between the sweetness of the milk and the astringency, saltiness of the fish sauce. So I reckon that's pretty much all the ingredients, so we might as well just get on and start doing it. So first thing to do is to give it a little bit of a taste with the old chilies and see, is my head going to actually blow up at this point? Now, reasonably hot, but not completely outrageous. Recipes usually say I'm going to use 4 of them, I think, which is quite enough. I'll also put my glasses on so I don't actually cut one of my fingers off, because this is a very, very sharp knife. It doesn't have to be very, very finely chopped, because this is going to be blitzed up in a food processor afterwards. So we'll just put those there. The recipe books always say take the seeds out, but I never bother to. I just use less chili if I want it less hot. So we'll put in 3 to 4 of these guys. You can tell I'm not a professional chef, because I can't do it so fast that the knife blurs, but you know, if I tried that, I'd chop my finger off, which would be exciting, but the blood colour wouldn't really go very well with the green colour, with the green curry. Might be able to disguise it if it was a stroganoff or a goulash, but not with a green curry. So there we are. I think that's quite enough chili to be getting on with. Now we go for our shallots. These are called echelon shallots. Not really certain why they're called echelon shallots, but they seem to do the trick. So these just need to be fairly roughly chopped. They don't need to be absolutely pulverized, because we're going to smooch this all up in a food processor. So just give that a bit of a rough chop. and one more shallot. That's shallot, you might say. Bad pun time. And after I've done this one, we'll just take a moment to clear the area, because the important thing about cooking, particularly with this style of cooking, is you need to keep your area fairly clear. So I'm just going to clear this. Do we have a bin somewhere this could be put? So we can just edit this bit out. So we keep that waste thing. Next thing, we're now going to take some ginger, and I've got wildly too much ginger here, so I'm just going to trim it down quite a bit. It's a bit of a waste, but ginger's not too expensive. If I wasn't food processing this, I would slice this very, very thinly. As it is, I can't really be bothered. Again, if I were Jamie Oliver, the knife would move so fast it would be like a blur, and then there'd just be neatly chopped stuff, but I'm not Jamie Oliver and I don't do this 24/7. So that's the ginger. Then we go for some garlic cloves. Now the recipe says 2 garlic cloves, but I don't believe it. Frankly, that's never going to keep the vampires away, so I think you need to have a bit more garlic than that. So one trick with garlic is always to get the flat of your knife and just batter it like that. So, and we'll take a bit of a sniff of this garlic. I'm one of those people who never likes to throw anything away before he's certain, and I think I'm going to actually use a new garlic rather than that one, because that's a little anemic. So you can tell we're doing this for real, because otherwise I'd have tested that before, which I haven't. So oh yeah, that's got a lot more flavour, and we'll just squish that down. No need to give it a lot of chopping really, I don't think. It really does help in the peeling of the skin off the garlic if you crush it with the flat blade of the knife. It just makes it so much easier to get it off. And then you would do a bit more crushing, and again that goes in there. And we'll take one more clove, I think. And what the hell, I'll put a final clove in, because 4 cloves is not excessive in my opinion. Yeah. Notice I'm not bothering to chop the garlic finely. I would if I was doing this as as an Indian meal, simply then I wouldn't be food processing it, I'd just be chopping it finely, but the food processor will do a lot of the work. Next we put in some coriander, small bunch of coriander, chop this up a little bit. Again, it doesn't have to be super fine, and he just goes in like that. One trick with coriander, always drench it with water when you get it from the shop, not just for cleaning purposes, but if you drench it and then dry it between some towels, then it just smells a lot better than if you didn't do that. It really brings out the smell and the flavour of the coriander. Next we do lemongrass stalks. In the recipes they always just say, just chop these or slice these. I have to say, they always say it so nonchalantly, and I never managed to do it as finely as they say, but this is how I do it and it seems to work. And don't bother, even if it gets quite woody, just use all of it, it'll be fine. It helps to have a pretty sharp knife doing this. But don't believe the tales that you can't cut yourself with a sharp knife, because I've managed to cut myself with a very sharp knife. It doesn't have to be blunt to enable you to cut yourself with it. Next we need some zest of the lime and some lime juice. We've already carefully washed this lime, so we just need to just get the zest off, which is just the sort of 1/10 of a millimetre or 1/2 a millimetre of the surface. You get a real punch of flavour, and that's the thing about Thai food, it has to hit you in the face, it has to be zingy, it can't just be blur, it's got to be exciting, and the lime really adds to that excitement. And because I want to make certain this pops, I'm actually going to use a second lime just to be on the safe side. So there you go. You may say it's wasteful or not necessary, but that's what I'm doing anyway. And I reckon that will do it. And we also need some juice. A trick here, you really don't need to get one of those juicers to do this. You just need to soften it up in your hand. And then, unless you've got really weak hands, you can just squeeze out as much juice as you want without having to dirty up another piece of kitchen appliance or tool. And that, I think, will do. The next thing we do is put some lime leaves in. These are dried lime leaves, but with the moisture, about 8 lime leaves, just crunch them up a bit. It would be nice to have fresh lime leaves, but they are difficult to get hold of. I tried to get ones from Waitrose, but they didn't have any, so these at least will keep for a year or two and they'll always be ready, so but probably not at the amounts I use. Probably won't last more than a few months. Now we get to the galangal, which, as I was saying, is basically a more subtle form of ginger, and it's not as well known in Britain as perhaps it should be. It's got a wonderful subtle flavour, sweet flavour, which is nowhere near as in your face as ginger. So again, I've got wildly too much of it, but fortunately it is not too expensive. So we'll just, so we get the, smells nice. There we are, that's a nice soft bit, that's probably all we need actually. Goes in there like that. That goes in like that. It's quite roughly chopped, but I don't think that's going to cause any real problems. And we'll just clear our workspace again. I've got a cat, a delightful black cat, swanning around by my legs, but I don't think he'd like chilies very much. I don't think it's really a cat thing. We need some crushed coriander seeds and black peppercorns, which I've also taken the liberty of actually measuring out 1 tablespoon of coriander, 1 teaspoon of black peppercorns. So we just mash this up a bit in a pestle and mortar. It's never going to get that fine, but it doesn't really need to be. So there she goes. We need a teaspoon of ground cumin, which I've already ground from solid spice earlier today. So I can't be bothered to measure it exactly. That's about a teaspoon. If you do any Asian cookery, I recommend buying solid spices in industrial quantities and grinding them in a cheap little coffee grinder. You get much better spices, and it's much cheaper than buying those tiny little thimbleful things in the supermarket, which never taste of anything anyway, because they've been exposed to ultraviolet light, which destroys the flavour of the spice after a while. And we need to put in a bit of Thai fish sauce. The recipe says 2 teaspoons. Frankly, I just that should be about right. The taste test is always the important thing, so we'll do a proper taste test at the appropriate juncture. And finally, this is very important, we put in some nice neutral oil. This is rice bran oil. You could use rapeseed oil. You don't want an oil that adds a lot of extraneous flavour to it. Again, it's 3 tablespoons, but I just sort of guess. The important thing here is we're going to be frying this paste on its own without extra oil, so we need to lubricate it a bit. So that's what we'll do. And we have now put in all the ingredients we need to put in for our paste. We just need to blend this to make the paste a suitable texture for actually frying and making the curry. Okay, this is now, we've just got to blend this together. Could use a food processor. This is a blender which does just as well. So you just press the button. it into a paste like that. It doesn't have to be perfect puree, but that is good enough, I think. Okay, we just now, before we've got our paste ready, we just now need to slice up our chicken breasts. This amount of paste makes enough for about 8 people to eat, and we have 6 large chicken breasts here, so that should be plenty of food for 6 to 8 people. It doesn't need to be chopped very finely, but probably about cubes of about 1 to 2 centimeters in size. So let's just start chopping this. So probably that's about an ideal size of chicken. So possibly there, that's probably about the right size. You want this to cook in about 10 to 15 minutes of fairly gentle cooking, so you do not want it to be very, very big, the pieces. And we just do the same to all of our chicken pieces, so let's just do that. It's not a science, it's just what basically looks right. You don't have to get out a ruler and measure 2 centimeters. It's just what basically looks right to your eye. But you don't want great big lumps because they will just take too long to cook. And the whole point about this is you cook gently. We're not a Chinese style cooking here where it's going to be cooked at a very high temperature and very quickly. It's going to be fairly leisurely, and we just want it done. We want small pieces because of that. Okay, now we come to the pièce de résistance, where the whole point of the exercise, which is to actually use the paste we've created to cook a meal. So first of all, let me get the hob working. The crucial thing about this is we don't want it to be too hot. So the first thing we do is we pour in a little coconut milk, just a small amount, and that will be our guide as to how hot when to put in the paste. And the stages of this are very simple. All we do is we fry the paste for about 5 minutes gently to liberate all those wonderful flavours and smells that Thai food has. Then we cook the chicken that's been cut up for about 10 minutes, again very, very gently. The key to this is gentle cooking. It's not something that's cooked at red heat because you risk damaging the flavours if you do that. And then finally we put in the remainder of the coconut milk, and we simmer for 10 to 15 minutes. So you're talking about 25 to 30 minutes total cooking time here. Really, you should use either a wok or a heavy large frying pan like this, If you use a light aluminium thing, the chances are it's just going to get over hot, and you might destroy some flavour along the way. So it's always better to have a good quality pan, heavy pan to do this. So we're just waiting for it now to get up to temperature, and I think it's pretty close to being temperature now. So we just take our paste that we made earlier and we just spoon it straight in. This isn't smell-o-vision, so you can't smell what it's going to be like, but if I've done it right, which I think I probably have, there are going to be some wonderful aromas floating around the kitchen fairly soon, as soon as it starts sizzling. And we need to fry this for about, you can see now steam is coming off. So we just need to turn it down a bit. We don't want this to be frying hugely fast. We just need it to be bubbling slightly. Just need to be bubbling very slightly. Yes. And I like to time these things, so I'm going to set this for about 5 minutes. It doesn't have to be precise. That's the nice thing about this, is provided you do it gently, it will, you've got a fair amount of latitude here. I would personally continue stirring it. You really don't want to overdo this. And this will bubble away now for about 5 minutes. You can probably see the bubbles there. That's really as much as you want it to be. You don't want it to be boiling at absolute maximum. Okay, we've now had the paste frying for about 5 minutes. So we're going to put in our chicken. We'll put it in 2 portions, and the idea is basically just to spread it around. Get it completely covered. And then we just you'll notice too that I'm taking the frying pan a bit off centre from the burner. This is because I just want to, it's an old Arga trick. This isn't an Arga, but it works just as well with this. It's a way of fine-tuning the temperature on the hob when you've got limited flexibility with the knobs on the actual fryer. So basically now we just fry this as gently as we can get away with for about 10 minutes. And you might say, why on earth does it have to be 10 minutes? Well, the reason is that you want integration of the taste. That is to say, you want the taste to penetrate the meat, because otherwise it just tastes like someone poured a load of sauce over meat and warmed it up, which isn't actually very appetizing. So you want the spices and the flavours to actually penetrate the meat, and the only way they're going to do that is if you actually cook it nice and slow for a good period of time. And that will really, I have done it with less time, and I have found that the flavours have not been as integrated as I would have liked. So in cookery books they never tell you generally the reasons why you fry something for this amount of time, but that's the reason I fry it for 10 minutes. And then we will also simmer it in coconut milk for another 10 to 15 minutes, which will finish off the cooking. You notice that the chicken here is browning up as well, which is what we want. And if I feel it's going a bit too vigorously, I just take the pan off centre from the hob, and that sort of arrests it a bit. So you can see that now the paste is uniformly covering the chicken, so hopefully we're going to get a nice flavour going through all the meat. But we just want to take care here that we don't over fry it. So I'm constant. This is not the sort of thing you can leave on the hob for 20 minutes and ignore it. You've really got to be constantly here, turning the spatula, making certain that things don't overdo. As you can see, I've taken it off centre again. Okay guys, it's been now frying for about 9 minutes or so. I reckon it's done, so I'm going to go through the last stage of the process. I've turned the timer off, and I'm going to pour in a tin of coconut milk, and we will now simmer the chicken for about another 10 to 15 minutes. Again, there's no hard and fast rules here, and that will be the cooking. Now, to give that authentic Thai flavour, there's one more ingredient we've got to put in. Well, one new ingredient, and also a bit more of an ingredient we've already used. So the ingredient we haven't used yet is Thai basil. This wonderful stuff. I've got actually wildly more than I need, but I'll just take some of it. Doesn't need to be chopped. Just needs to be ripped apart a bit like that and stirred in. That will give that authentic aniseedy taste to the curry. And we'll put in a little bit more, because what the hell, it won't keep, so we might as well put in a fair amount. As I said, the way to awaken the flavour in this is to drench it with cold water and to dry it beforehand, because that really wakes it up. Now we just basically bring this to a simmer, and we just let it go. Later on we will do a taste test to make certain that we've got the balance of flavours right. Another ingredient which we already have used, but I'm going to use a bit more of, is Thai fish sauce. Because I've already put a little in, I'm going to put a little bit more. That will up the saltiness. I don't think too much, because the coconut milk is actually quite sweet, so it'll be a balance. And that's the thing about Thai food, it's got to be a balance of flavours. It mustn't be too sweet, it mustn't be too salty. So we now just need to leave that we'll bring that up to simmering, and then we'll simmer for 10 to 15 minutes. I'll probably take a piece of meat out at some point and just check that it's thoroughly cooked through, though experience tells me it will be, but I want to be absolutely certain. So we're just waiting now for the first bubbles to arise, which hopefully should do so fairly soon. Turning up the hob just to make that happen. Oh yeah, we can see some bubbles now. So in a moment, I'm going to set my timer for 10 minutes, which I've done, and we will come back to it. Well, the video will come back to it when that 10 minutes is up or so, but I won't. Of course, I'll be here all the time making certain it doesn't boil too much. Good. Okay, this guy has now been simmering for about 10 minutes. Normally for this dish I usually allow it about 15 minutes, but what I'm going to do in a moment is give it a little bit of a taste test and also just check that the meat is fully cooked through. So I have to say I'll be gobsmacked if it isn't, because I've cut them pretty small, so they shouldn't be a problem. So I will just get something. I just need to get a little plate to check that, to put this on. So we just need to, let's take a big bit of chicken. That's a pretty big bit of chicken there, and we'll just slice it through and check that it is fully cooked, because giving people food poisoning is a pretty big social faux pas, I have found. So let's just make absolutely certain that it's cooked all the way through. It is cooked all the way through, and since that is pretty much the biggest piece, all the others are bound to be cooked through as well. So that's pretty much done. So we've done our sanity check, so we're not going to come down with salmonella or anything. The next thing we have to check is actually the flavour, which from an aesthetic point of view is rather more critical. So let's just check that. Actually, that seemed to be pretty much on the button. However, there's a little bit of it verging into the salty, not desperately so. So I think it could sweeten very slightly. So I'm going to use palm sugar for this. Not a huge amount, just a little bit, because I don't think it's far off being correct. So we'll just shake a little bit of that in, perhaps about half a teaspoon, and we'll dissolve that in, and we will let that simmer for a little bit more time, just to let the brownie in motion distribute the flavours, the sweetness around a little bit, give it a few seconds, and then give it another taste test. But I think that's probably pretty done. Oh yeah, I think that will do nicely. So we have pretty much finished.